Welcome back to my channel. We hear all the time in the US about how diversity is our greatest strength. But have you ever noticed almost no time is spent explaining why, let alone responding to the criticisms about it? That alone should make you suspicious. Just because some nice sounding phrase is used over and over doesn't make it true. It is just as likely you are being propagandized. Or, as I usually describe it, they're using the repetition equals truth tactic. So let's look at things more carefully. An obvious question would be, why would diversity make us strong? I can certainly think of some things. On the other hand, bringing in people from a culture that still takes part in cannibalism would not be a benefit. But what I mostly notice is that those who act like diversity has no downsides are also those who try to silence the speech of the opposition. As such, I have little reason to believe anything they say on this subject. Heck, people who defended the right of every athlete to support Democrats or not stand for the national anthem are now trashing a quarterback of the New York Giants for daring to introduce President Trump. So, right off the bat, we can pretty much rule out that the diversity crowd actually wants diversity where it matters the most. They are more into censorship. They even go so far, including former President Biden, to declare African Americans who vote for Trump aren't really black. I'm pretty sure that is a biological impossibility, since your race is not determined by your political views. But then, most of this crap comes from the Democrats who don't know what a woman is. So at least we can say they have some consistency in their insanity. In fact, it seems more like they want division, not diversity. Diversity can easily be manipulated to increase division, and some people want that. Democrats once promoted giving equality to women in sports. Yet now they not only advocate having men competing against women if the man just claims he is really a woman, they even want these men to be allowed in women's restrooms and locker rooms. If a real woman complains, they are told they can use some other facility. It's absolutely nuts. In case you don't know my view, it's simple enough. All the talk about gender being different from a person's biological sex is a lie. How do I know? Simple. The laws providing equality in sports for women were based on actual biological sex, not on what a person thinks they are, because the sexual differences usually give a huge physical advantage to a male. Advantages that don't go away because of what you think. Don't give me the crap that it's about gender and not sex when you then turn around and treat gender as being the same as sex. Nations should defend their culture. When you bring in immigrants, legal or not, without due regard for the existing culture, you will not end up with strength, but more like tribalism. That is not a good option. And certainly you shouldn't be bringing in people who come because you are going to give them a lot of free stuff. That is the wrong kind of motivation for attracting good people. And isn't it strange to advocate bringing in people from a culture that treats women as second class, while those bringing them in complain about patriarchy? The change in culture is something the Democrats are well aware of. Years ago, I remember the outrage about whites moving into Harlem and how it would change that culture. But let's move on to yet another absurdity. We're told lots of immigrants, including millions of illegal immigrants, are good for the country. And amazingly, a key claim is, who else is going to pick tomatoes for $5 an hour? This is from people who insist upon drastically higher minimum wage. Their inconsistency is stunning. For Democrats to use $5 per hour pay as an argument makes me wonder if they aren't still in favor of a kind of slavery. You know, instead of not paying a salary for slave labor, but providing food and a shabby place to live, now they instead just pay them very little because they don't want to pay more for their vegetables. I also remember Democrats trashing businesses for hiring illegal immigrants because those businesses would pay them less. That's just another example of Democrats actually having no real standards other than the grasping for power. An example of what can happen was reported many years ago on, I think, 60 Minutes. A group of Vietnamese refugees were settled in a Gulf state, maybe Mississippi, in a fishing community. Seems they were accepted and got jobs working on the fishing boats. Great, no problem. Seems everyone got along. But then they brought in a lot more refugees, and suddenly they were taking all the jobs from American fishermen. After all, even low pay in the U.S. may give refugees a better life. But does that mean Americans should lose their jobs? I bet some will say it is fair. But I bet those who say that aren't the ones expecting to lose their particular jobs. So this is a case where some legal immigration is fine, but we still need to have limits to allow for assimilation. We should mostly be bringing in people from cultures that are similar to our own. Not only those people, just mostly. And do better screening and greatly reduce chain migration. It isn't even a matter of whether or not I think American culture is best. I would think it would be absurd to send many millions of Westerners into an Asian country too. What we need is unity, not particularly diversity. And culture does unite a people. We need more assimilation, and that means not bringing in too many immigrants from different cultures at a time. If you come here, it should be with the intent to assimilate. If I go to another country, the same thing applies. I need to fit in with their culture, not the other way around. Another problem is that the West has practically placed immigrants on a higher level than their native citizens. Just recently, I saw a story about a Sikh, or as the British tend to pronounce it, Sikh, who are from India. I don't know much about that group, but this isn't about the particular group that matters in this case. It just happens that it serves as an example of how some in the West are assuming the worst of their own citizens, and especially if they are white. This Sikh stabbed and killed a white teenager in the UK. In this particular case, the way the Sikh is assumed to be telling the truth, while his victim is literally bleeding out, is flat out scary. The killer and his family labeled the victim as racist. Eventually, police body cam footage showed the teenager couldn't even sit up on his own. As you watch this clip, note how the boy isn't resisting and shows no ability to resist because he is literally dying. He isn't a threat at all. Yet while repeatedly saying he has been stabbed, as well as saying he can't breathe, the police are focused on handcuffing him, and when they finally respond to his claims he was stabbed, the response he gets is, "I don't think so, mate," from a cop who hasn't even bothered to check. This is just part of the very disturbing body cam footage.
Got this stud.
Right, let's get you out of there, shall we? Oh.
I was in bed asleep. Whenever you find me up there, look, someone could touch me.
I can't breathe.
Grab his other arm.
Help. So I've just come running, we had a little
Club
on
it.
Steph Denny's road. Come running around the corner.
What's happened to you, alright?
This stud.
You've been stabbed? Whereabouts? I don't think you have, mate.
Look, that's what, and then I'm like, you've got nothing, I want to keep you up, keep your...
Hand?
No, I can't breathe.
Put the hand in the cuff, mate.
This is like
can't
the
breathe.
punches that's happened to us. You've been walking, you can't...
By the way, he had been stabbed 5 times. The police were very cordial to the actual killer, just assuming he had done nothing wrong, giving more attention to his minor injuries than they did to the stabbing victim. But they put the victim, who couldn't even sit up on his own, in handcuffs. At least they managed to read him his rights just before he died. Remember, at this point, all the police are going on is a claim of the killer and other members of the killer's family. Obviously, no thought was even given to considering the possibility that maybe the killer was lying. Killers are known to do that. Ultimately, this comes down to treating a person of color as being automatically more honest than a white person. Just play the race card as if it trumps all else, as it apparently did in this case. We are seeing much the same in the US, where just for being white, you are declared to be a racist, mostly by people who falsely claim they are against hate speech. And if you deny being racist, they'll say that proves you are racist. If a white person says they don't decide things based on color, you know, the very thing Dr. Martin Luther King preached, they now declare that statement proves you are racist. It's insane. In fact, such twisted logic is racist on its face. Let's do a little comparison. When George Floyd died, the UK Prime Minister and other politicians took a knee and talked about Floyd all the time. It took ages for the Prime Minister to even mention this innocent teenager's name once, and none of them has taken a knee, even though this boy was a British citizen. But what do you expect from a country like the UK, which, for a long time, has been arresting people for supposed hate speech? This is just a natural escalation of that insanity. I can tell you the reaction some minorities will have to this killing, immigrants or not. They will take the position that it's only fair that whites suffer the same way their cultures may have suffered. You doubt that? A far-left activist group called Stand Up to Racism disrupted a vigil for the murdered student. Such people are scum who are fine with murder, as long as it isn't one of their own that dies. I had this crazy idea that the solution to an unfair justice system is to make it more fair, not to get even with more injustice. Those who just want to get even will drag their nations into civil war eventually. Unfortunately, I bet that is the goal of many people. I don't mean the violent individuals. They are just the pawns of those who want to get more power by tearing down society. And those leaders are mostly white, at least in the West. Consider some other facts. In the UK, a Sikh is allowed to carry a so-called ceremonial knife because of their cultural beliefs. But a woman is not even allowed to carry pepper spray for self-defense. Bringing in cultures that then receive special dispensations that others don't get is not justice either. I don't care what someone's culture is when they're living in the homeland of that culture. I care a lot when they bring it to another culture and get special privileges. And I really care when that special privilege goes against what the nation they have moved to has declared shouldn't be allowed as a matter of public safety, in this case, carrying a sizable knife. As one person described the victim, he was stabbed because he was white, handcuffed because he was white, buried by the media because he was white. This is no way to run a country. It is bad, ultimately, for the majority and minorities because it isn't actual justice. Justice is supposed to be blind, but it isn't anymore. I've said before, I was a band director and taught at schools with all kinds of different percentages of minorities, usually blacks, but not always. Yet, in spite of being white myself, I always increased the number of black students in my bands. I found that when I would apply discipline to a black student, at first I'd be more likely to get resentment from some of the black students. You know, the knee-jerk claim that they are only being punished because they were black. Much like black Democrat politicians cry racism whenever they get pushback for their policies. But I never tolerated that from my students. They soon saw that I was treating everyone the same way. I think that is what attracted more black students to my program. I made no effort to make up for any possible past injustices. That is the path to disaster. I just started from day one, treating everyone the same. Thanks for watching, and don't let the trolls stop you from speaking out.